And I was like, oh my God, that's a job. I have to have that job.
Well, hey, welcome back to the Wild Business Growth Podcast. This is your place to hear from a new entrepreneur or innovator every single Wednesday morning who's turning wild ideas into wild growth. I'm your host, Max Branstetter, founder and podcast producer at Max Podcasting, and you can email me at max@maxpodcasting.com to save time with your high-quality podcast. This is episode 144, and today's guest is Laura Belgray. You know her as the award-winning copywriting expert and the founder of Talking Shrimp. She has an incredible background, resume, everything, from online clients including Marie Forleo and Amy Porterfield, to also writing spots for everybody from Nickelodeon to Bravo to NBC to HBO. She's just something else. In this episode, we talked how to make your audience go bananas, emphasis on bananas with your copy. How to be you, be yourself in the online space and beyond, and even a little sneak preview, or as some would call it, a nip slip, of Laura's upcoming book, Tough Titties. It is the Talking Shrimp, aka the Shrimp Who Talks. Enjoy the show. Alrighty, we are here with Laura fucking Belgray. I just really wanted to introduce you that way.
You're right. There are no holds barred here. Now you've set the tone. Perfect.
Exactly. That I just wanted to create a snippet just to, so you can play that over and over again to kind of put you to sleep.
I'm going to use it as my get ready song.
Exactly. It's the same as the Rocky theme music. But
Exactly.
No, Laura Belgray, creative copywriting genius. I mean, your reputation speaks for yourself. The fact your middle name is the F-bomb, I think, is a whole other story. But This is something I've been looking forward to for a really, really long time. And we are going to get into copy and other things that make your audience go bananas, B-A-N-A-S. But before we get to that, I want to dive a little bit into your career in the TV world. Yes, you kind of started your career that way, but you also, at the age of 2, made your Sesame Street debut. Can you share some of that background?
I did. You really did your homework. Wait, first I have to backtrack and say that it's B-A-N-A-N-A-S because you spelled it bananas. And so that's
Did I?
You did. And so that just nags at me, so I just had to go back to that. And now we'll go to, yeah, that's a perfect segue to Sesame Street, I think, spelling.
Yeah, let's get the count here.
Get the count? Oh, the count.
The character, the count.
I thought that was like one of your technicians to edit out the bananas. Yes, the Count and Grover and Oscar. I didn't meet any of those. I was on the swings in Riverside Park. This was in 1972, I believe. And they asked my mom if they could film me. She's not the momager type, but she said, sure. I think they said it's for Sesame Street. She was all for it. I was on the show open for Sesame Street. For those years, I think like 72 to 74 would play occasionally. They had a bunch of show opens in rotation. So I would get very excited when mine was on.
Would people start recognizing you when they saw you on the street after that?
Yeah, I doubt it. Maybe when I was wearing the same little red snowsuit. I mean, it was me at age 2. I don't think I stayed looking that same way. I don't think you'd recognize me from my 2-year-old self. But no, it didn't make me an instant celebrity.
Well, that clearly launched you on a path where you were going to work in TV, whether that is swinging and being caught candidly or actually proactively producing content for TV, writing copy for TV, and creating these promos. How did you get the role at Nickelodeon?
My path was never all that clear. I knew that I wanted to do something with writing or something entertainment-y. TV was the dream, but I thought the only way to get into TV was to write a spec script. This was when I got out of college, which seemed so daunting to me, or start as an assistant in a writer's room. And I knew from the get-go that I would be a terrible assistant, not a path for me. So I didn't know there was a role in TV for me. And I started off in magazines. I got an internship at a magazine called Spy, which was like a hip downtown publication started by Graydon Carter and Kurt Anderson. So I got an internship there and was a really terrible intern. The editor had to take me out to lunch with my fellow intern and say, like, you can take initiative here. I was like, oh, okay, thanks. Because I was supposed to be submitting ideas, like journalistic ideas for stories. Did not have any ideas in that department. I did get hired as a copywriter on the ad side when my internship was up, and they gave me my first advertorial. And an advertorial, for people who don't know, is like the pages in the magazine that look like part of the magazine, but are actually an advertisement. And it'll say like advertisement at the very top in tiny letters, right? So I wrote one for Doers. It was a full page that looked just like Spy. I wrote a quiz called like, do you party like Uncle Marty? And that was a quiz to determine whether you are like a loser old fart or hip and young. And if you were a loser old fart, then of course drinking Doers was the answer. And there was a little essay on being an adult and all that kind of stuff, which I knew nothing about, but I took a guess. That was my first stab at copywriting. I didn't even know that's what it was really, but it was a hit and got me in the door at the next magazine, which was New York Magazine. And I only lasted like 6 months there. I was terrible at corporate. It wasn't really what I wanted to be doing. My boss hated all my ideas. She said it needed to be more elegant, more up here. And she would signal that waving her hand over her head, which is the sign for over my head. But
You have a way with words.
So, and she said to me at one point, I like had this idea that I thought was a home run. It was this fun idea for the year-end double issue, the Yeti. Had them like mock up, the design department mock up a like abominable snowman type creature and said like, what is a Yeti? And it was this fun one sheet idea. And she was like, no, I'm afraid not. It needs to be more elegant. Maybe if it were a Nickelodeon piece. And I was like, oh, I wish. Because I loved Nickelodeon and I loved Nick at Night. I didn't know what kind of role I could play in a place like that. But then a friend of mine who came and met me for lunch, he was a friend from Spy, told me that he was writing promos at VH1. I said, what are promos? And he said, I just watch a lot of TV and write the little things during the commercials that are like commercials for the network. And I was like, oh my God, that's a job. I have to have that job. And so he hooked me up at VH1. Creative director there liked my stuff. She liked my stuff from New York Magazine. The only stuff I had to show for myself was that and a bunch of postings that I had been paid to write on this internet forum. So someone else from Spy, all these connections came in really handy. Someone else from Spy was working at an internet startup, which we had no idea what that meant, right? What was the internet for? But I didn't understand because this is 1994. They said, there's this thing called a bulletin board where people trade messages. I need you to like just post stuff on there, interact with people and make it feel like an engaged place, make it feel like an engaged audience. So basically I was hired as a ringer.
And you had a bunch of spies working for you.
Yes,
which
exactly.
is always comes in handy.
It did. Spent, I don't know if it was a couple of months probably, like the easiest gig I've ever had, easiest money I've ever made writing, posting. It was like an early prehistoric version of Facebook, right? Just posting about things I liked about what was happening on Melrose Place and 90210. That was pretty much it. And so I printed out my conversations on there. I thought they were very lively and funny. And this creative director at VH1 like went through those and was like, okay, you can write a promo. So she liked those, hired me to write my first promo, and I did that. And then I got hired to write more, wrote scripts for VH1's top 10 and top 20 countdowns. Because when people know you can write, they start hiring you and word gets around because good writers are hard to find. I think always, even though it was a good time to get in the door, I think it's still true. And so I started getting hired for all different things. And then a friend of mine, someone who knew someone at Nickelodeon and Nick at Night, and they hired me to write quizzes about, I think, the Munsters.
Oh my God.
And when I was writing those, I met a guy who he came along. He was like, "Oh, so that's where all the VHS tapes are for the Munsters." Wanted to sit and watch with me. And I said, "What are you doing?" Because he kept pausing it, which was driving me bananas, and taking notes. And I was like, "Is this how we share?" It's really annoying. I said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I'm writing. Nick and Knight's coming out with a book, and I'm writing a chapter on the Munsters." So I was like, "Oh my God, that's a job."
I'm sensing a common trend here.
Yes. And so he said, "Oh, let me introduce you to the boss. Maybe there's another chapter that needs to be assigned." So he introduced me to his boss, who said, "Are you interested in watching every episode of Bewitched and summarizing every episode of that for the book?" And I said, "Absolutely, I am." So, and I loved Bewitched. And in fact, I was like, thank goodness it's Bewitched and not I Dream of Jeannie, because Bewitched is so much better. And he said, well, those are fighting words around here. You better be careful. And I was like,
Yeah.
I want to work at a place like this. I want to work at a place where people will fight will die on that hill over Bewitched or I Dream of Jeannie.
Yeah, I mean, I'm about to like throw this microphone against the wall.
You're an I Dream of Jeannie guy, I guess.
Yeah, I got the song going to my head now.
So, because I was a TV fiend, and I was like, this is the place where I belong. And so he assigned me this chapter, and it got me in the door at Nickelodeon. I wrote the Bewitched chapter. I summarized every episode of Bewitched for it. And he was like, would you like to write, do you want to write promos? I said, absolutely. So I started writing promos there. That was my home. They spun off into TV Land. And so TV Land and Nick at Night were my home for years and years, maybe 15 years or maybe more. I've lost track of time by now. Yeah, 15 years.
It's okay. Yeah, we'll call it 15. What's the biggest lesson you learned from working with TV promos?
Oh gosh, there are so many. One is like give things ownership. They would say, can you give it ownership at the top or give it ownership at the bottom? Meaning, can you throw in the Nick at Night name or the Nickelodeon name? Like instead of saying Tiny Toon Adventures is coming up, it's, well, this was complicated. It was Steven Spielberg presents Tiny Toon Adventures. And then we had to say it's Steven Spielberg presents Tiny Toon Adventures on Nick at Night is coming up, or on Nickelodeon coming up. But anyway, like using the brand name a lot to drill it into people's heads. Here's the biggest lesson I learned there. So a place like Nick at Night was showing the same things that you could see on another channel, TBS, whatever, same reruns of old shows. They made it the place to watch reruns of old shows by giving it a voice and a brand and a point of view. We have an attitude and a point of view and a story about these old shows. We really care about them. We have curated them for you. And that was the tone of the network, taking them seriously. Promo for Partridge Family, they'd say, it's introducing the Reuben hair shift. And they would show how Reuben's like hairpiece basically would go up and down when he waved his eyebrow. They'd say, it's a part of our television heritage. I learned there that having a point of view and a distinct voice will make you the go-to for something that everybody else offers. That was the biggest lesson there.
Let's get to talking shrimp and copy that makes your audience go bananas, or as some people say, bananas. Yeah, I mean, I just like to abbreviate things. I think you have one of the coolest brand names, company names ever. My family business that I come from is Hippo Direct. So we got like a hippo, we got a shrimp. What else could you want? Talking shrimp, where did you start to formulate this idea of, I should really go out on my own and really start a company around this?
Oh, I didn't at all. So it kind of happened by accident. I mean, I was a promo writer. I had no intention of starting a company, starting a business. I thought to start a business, you had to have a big business idea and a business blueprint and, and some kind of invention like Spanx.
That's the only way to have a successful business is to invent Spanx.
Yes, that's really what I thought. I was like, a business seemed like so businessy. And I didn't necessarily ever want to be a boss or hire a team, and I still don't. it wasn't an idea to start a business. What happened was my husband and I got married. We filed our taxes the year after we got married and got reamed. I said to my accountant, I was like, I thought being a married couple, filing as a married couple would we'd do better with taxes. And he was like, what made you think that? No way. He said, what you should do if you want to pay lower taxes is incorporate. And especially since my husband was in restaurants and also worked independently, I was an independent contractor, not on payroll anywhere. I got paid as a contractor. So he said, just come up with a name, preferably one with an available URL in case you ever want to use it, and I will incorporate you. And so went through a bunch of silly names. Wanted something that could mean anything or nothing or apply to either one of us or to neither of us. And I think one idea that I had was Funny Cry Happy, which was the name of a janky gift shop on 14th Street near me. And believe it or not, Funny Cry Happy was taken. I was like, oh, how about Talking Shrimp? Because applies to me as a writer, my husband as a restaurant person. We like shrimp.
You also like talking.
I also like talking. And believe it or not, the URL was available. Talking Shrimp it was. And I decided, I was like, well, since I've got this URL, and I was planning to make a website anyway, for my reel, just to host my reel, like my TV spots, so that I could get more clients in TV. I said, might as well put it on talkingshrimp.com. So I did. My friend Marie Forleo, she was already teaching people how to start businesses. She'd been online for years and knew all the ins and outs and knew how to do this backwards and forwards. And she said, what's going to be your opt-in? And I was like, my what in? She was like, your opt-in. And so she like took out a piece of paper, like a yellow legal pad, and diagrammed for me how to set up an opt-in, that you have to offer like a free thing. You set up, you get an account with this thing called Aweber, and then you get this confirmation email. She diagrammed it all out for me, what I had to do. And I was like, that seems a little complicated, but okay. And she said, and you're going to have a blog, right? I was like, well, isn't it too late to have a blog? It's 2009. And she was like, no, you moron, you must have a blog. She's like, you love to write. Why would you not have a blog? I put a blog on it. I put on an opt-in up that had nothing to do with my blog. It was 5 Secrets to Non-Sucky Copy. That is kind of how my business started. And then I put my TV reel on there. My TV spots were all hosted there. And then so was my blog. People started signing up for my emails more based on my blog, like entrepreneurs who found me. I don't know if it ever got a single TV promo producer. That was all word of mouth, but people started signing up for my list and started asking me if I could help them with their website copy and things like that. And I said yes. And that's how I segued into this very weird and wonderful world that is the online space, and how my business started.
The weird and wonderful. That's a weird and wonderful way of describing it. How frequent were you blogging at the start there?
Very irregularly. I had a lot of ideas at the start, and I was just writing stories. I wasn't writing anything really instructional, anything that necessarily went with my opt-in. Like they'd opt in for non-sucky copy tips. And then my blog, the blog posts that I sent them would be about how my father called rain boots rubbers, or just random stories from childhood, or like, look at this Menudo video. I mean, all kinds of random stories that I just felt like writing. And I didn't really understand the purpose of a blog, but I think that did me a lot of favors, because people saw that they processed what I was writing, those blog posts, as copy. They're like, I love your copy. Can you help me write my copy? So it worked, even though it was not delivering quote unquote value in the sense that people mean when they say deliver massive value.
Well, maybe it wasn't massive value, but it was, it was decent enough that got someone excited.
Yeah, it was entertainment value.
Right. And for anybody that checks out talkingshrimp.com, I mean, if it's not set as your homepage already, you have like one of the coolest, clean, like the best brand image It's so consistent. It flows to social media as well. What did kind of the behind the scenes of crafting your brand look like?
Mm. To the rebrand in 2019. Before that, it was also a very consistent brand. It was a look that I really loved, but I was nowhere to be seen on it. You know, how you introduced me at the beginning of the show, Laura fucking Belgray. I recognized around 2017. I mean, it was at the very beginning of 2017 when I did this like kind of future pacing exercise in a workshop. The work I wanted to do and the life that I wanted to have required me stepping out of the shadows and required me no longer being a blank canvas and becoming Laura fucking Belgray. I wanted to be, so I was known then always as so and so's copywriter. This is Laura. She writes for SpongeBob. She writes for Nickelodeon. She writes for, this is Laura. She's Marie Forleo's copywriter, which I was not, by the way. We partnered, but she was not, I was not her copywriter. She was her own copywriter. So I didn't want to be anyone's copywriter. I didn't want to be known as anyone's anything. I wanted to be known as Laura fucking Belgray. And I knew that I wanted to start making a living writing my writing in my voice and have that be what made the money rather than writing in other people's voices for them. I had kind of hit the wall on copywriting as a service. It's like, I don't really want to do that anymore. I love teaching it and I love writing emails, but I don't want to be I want to be Laura fucking Belgray. So that required putting my face all over my website and being the face of my brand and being known. That's where the brand you're looking at now comes from. That was the impetus for making it look the way it does. And then the style of it is very retro kind of, I would say the exact year being 1980. Like I wanted it to look like an ad in a 1980 New York magazine.
Exactly. Retro, vintage, like throwback stuff like that is just so cool. Like people just love nostalgia.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really clever way to brand yourself, and clearly it's helped you stand out even more. And you mentioned that you had this tension of being frustrated as being, so-and-so's copywriter or SpongeBob's right-hand woman, I'm sure. Sandy Cheeks, basically. Can you describe the feeling when you finally felt like, man, I am Laura fucking Belgray?
I think it was, well, I started going out on stages and podcasts and saying that and telling this story. And I think when people started repeating it back to me and saying, like you did just now, and saying,
yeah,
you're
guilty.
Right? No, I love it. I'm grateful for that. When they started repeating it back to me, I said, okay, I did it. It worked. And it feels great. It feels great to be identified as me in my own right and known for my brand and my work rather than coming on. And I mean, I can imagine how like Gail King feels when everybody asks her, like, what's Oprah really like? That's how it always was with Marie for a long time. Well, tell us about Marie. What's Marie like? And I was like, oh, this isn't going to be about me, is it? It felt great to be recognized in my own right and have people say they love my work and have people mention me. I mean, I have an ego, so I can't deny it. I really like being tagged. I like it when people say, sign up for Laura Belgray's emails. They're a master class in email writing. And I see that on LinkedIn or wherever it is. It makes me really happy.
Yeah, you can feel it. If you haven't trademarked the F word already, maybe that's something that, is good fit with the brand because clearly people are saying it. I'm guilty of that. Let's get into bananas. I'm going to do like the Bart Simpson, like spelling of bananas properly on the chalkboard type thing. Making your audience go bananas with copy. What are some key tips that you can share to, not just keep your audience intrigued, but actually make them go absolutely bananas, bonkers, crazy bananas again, I guess?
Yeah. I mean, for one, you want to make it conversational. Whether you are writing content that is around your brand, and I consider content copy, by the way. Most people don't. They're like, there's sales copy and then everything else is content. I think that all the content, the emails you write, your captions on social media, all that stuff, I consider all of it copy. If it gets people to remember your brand and eventually and draws them to you and gets them to know, like, and trust you and buy from you, it's all copy. So for one, conversational and writing like you talk is absolutely, that's imperative. One stumbling block that people have, and they don't even realize it when they're trying to write like they talk, and they're like, it's just not coming out right. It doesn't sound like a person, is that they're not even using contractions. And contractions we use constantly when we talk. We say, I can't, I won't, I would have, we'll show you, come on over, we'll be here anytime. They don't say, hello, I am so glad that you are here. But that's what we see on most websites. That's the kind of talk that we see in most copy. People don't realize that they're doing it, but it's been drilled into them by school, by teachers, by being in corporate. You're told you're not supposed to use contractions. So working that right pinky, if you touch type, which hits Mr. Apostrophe, that's really key.
I love Mr. Apostrophe. I feel like we just went right back to Sesame Street.
He's a good friend. Yeah, he should be a character who's like friends with Big Bird.
kind of just on one of Big Bird's shoulders.
Yeah, exactly. Looking for Snuffleupagus. The apostrophe is really important there, making contractions, and so is reading your stuff out loud. Read it out loud and see where you find yourself changing it as you read it out loud. When it comes out of your voice, when it comes out of your mouth, wherever you change it with your voice, change it on the page to match that. Where you're like, oh, that's not how I would say it. Change it to match that on the page. And it's something that comes naturally to me, but it's a real struggle for a lot of people to write like they talk. And it's so important because we read, we sound things out in our heads when we read. And if it comes across as stiff and formal, it doesn't feel like a person. We don't want to be sold to by a business. We don't want to be talked to. We don't want to talk to a business or have a business talk to us. We want a person. So conversational, paint a picture, use specifics instead of being vague, saying things in a vague way. For instance, I was in a dark place, the darkest place of my life. A lot of people say that in their story. And use specifics. What does that look like? What does it mean that you were in a dark place? Were you like literally in a closet?
That's probably how I would say it, yeah.
Or were you in your unwashed sweats for 3 weeks crying into a bag of Doritos and stalking?
Wait, hold on. This is hitting way too close to home.
You've been in a dark place.
Well, I just think I mean I can't remember the last time I wasn't wearing sweatpants.
Well,
and Doritos are probably there as well.
I have been washing my sweatpants lately. I have to because I wear them. So I just don't want to take them off, not even to put in the washing machine. So using concrete specifics, original details, that's really important. I like to say, like, give it the Steven Spielberg test, which is if you handed this copy, if you handed this piece of writing to a director, would they know what kind of scene they were going to make? Would they know what it looks like? So instead of saying, I got so mad today, I was just furious. I've never been so mad. You say, as my husband went out the door, I threw a shoe at him. That's mad. That's a scene. That passes the Steven Spielberg test. So specifics, and that helps you write with personality. That helps you put personality into everything you write. And using your audience's words, especially when it comes to sales copy, using their words. This creates resonance, or that yes or yikes or yay feeling when they read it. Instead of assuming what they want to hear, interview them, find out what they really say. Use the words that they say out loud and that are in their head. I mean, that when they are up in the middle of the night tossing and turning and can't sleep, or when they wake up in the morning and what they're wishing for when they blow out their birthday candles, use the words that are in their head. We've seen enough copy saying, like, step into your power and own your greatness. What does that mean? Nobody wakes up saying, like, today is the day that I'm going to step into my power and own my greatness. It might be, today's the day I am going to ask that person out at the office. Or today's the day I'm going to actually sit down and follow through on writing my book like I've promised myself I would for 5 years now.
Or to wash your sweatpants.
Or to wash it. Today is the day. Today I'm going to do it.
Embrace greatness. Well, those are awesome. I mean, you just rattled off so many amazing tips there. And one of the first ones you mentioned, I've seen this myself where like I'll get ready to share out a podcast episode, for example, or, share out a blog post on social media. And I'll like start typing and then I'm about to hit send or publish or whatever. And I read it back and I'm like, what the, like, it feels like a computer type this or something. Like this is automated. I'm like, that's just not me. And so I'll just scrap it and try to be way more casual and conversational. So I think that's a really, really good point. And then I love the Spielberg test because those details, when you view it through that lens of like, okay, you're briefing a director or you want someone to take this and turn it into like a visual sense, that's a really great metaphor because really you want people to visualize things as they're reading it. They're going to have a picture in their head. And the more detailed you can get and the more character you can add with that picture, just through your words, can bode so much better for you and your brand. So I love that test. I don't think I've ever loved a test. So that speaks volumes.
That's a good test. The classic example is saying, are you feeling overweight versus saying, can't button your favorite pants. Feeling overweight, there's no picture of that. Do you cry when you step on the scale? Well, there's a picture. You can't button your favorite pants. There's a picture. Have to lie down to zip up your jeans. There's a picture. Yeah, that's the classic example if you want something really salesy.
Yeah, I mean, who doesn't love really salesy? When you think of all the copy that you've written over the years, what aspect of your technique do you get the most compliments on?
Storytelling. The fact that I tell stories in everything I do, but especially in my emails and my captions, my Instagram captions. I always tell a story of some sort and connect it to a point or a call to action or a sale. So they love that. They love that I have found a way to tell all the stories that I want to tell and make them relevant and resonant to the reader.
People just love story. I don't know if that's just like an innate human thing.
Mm-hmm.
You get a good storyteller in a room, and people just go bananas. B-A-N. I'm not going to spell again. This is going to change your whole outlook on the word bananas and your approach to it.
Yes, we are wired for story as humans. I guess it's how we used to communicate, right? From like town to town, village to village. I guess before there were towns. From village to village, from generation to generation.
I don't think anyone was going to stop you there, but you can keep going.
As warnings to each other, like there are a lot of dinosaurs in the area. They would draw stories in pictures on caves. I think I could be getting it wrong, but there's something ancient about stories. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Did you used to work at the History Museum? Because that was straight out.
Right? Did humans and dinosaurs coexist even? I don't even know that much. I know there were tigers.
I don't know. It always blows my minds. It blows both of my minds. It always blows my mind thinking about that because I think growing up, you think like, okay, there was kind of like the dinosaur era and then the human era. Like that's basically like the scale you look at it. And then you realize like the difference between like when T-Rex existed and woolly mammoths was like some ungodly amount of time. It's crazy how far apart these things were.
Right. And then my whole worldview is informed by the Flintstones, where like, they had
exactly.
a pet dinosaur. Yeah.
And your whole view of vitamins. So it really impacts everything. Did you know that both Laura and I are paleontologists? That is not true. But what is true is how great a podcast can be for your business or your brand. We have reached a new level of corniness. If you are interested in a podcast for your business or your brand, but you don't quite want to deal with all those painstaking seconds, minutes, hours, days, weeks, years, decades, we'll just keep going and going. Behind the scenes that it takes to build a high-quality podcast and keep it running and running. Email me at max@maxpodcasting.com. I will take a lot of that off your plate so you can save time with your high-quality podcast. Now, back to Laura, who's got a pretty cool and pretty wild shout out about some guy whose name I cannot pronounce. Let's switch gears a little bit. Let's get to a fan favorite segment called Making Your Audience... No, I'm just kidding. Wild Business Shout Out of the Week.
The Wild Business Shout Out of the Week!
Appreciate it. Thank you. Wild Business Shout of the Week. This is where we talk about a creative marketing campaign or approach, or just something going on that broke through and caught your attention. And there's something with Mandy. I forget the last name. I forget how to pronounce the last name, but from I know him from Princess Bride. Can you share what caught your attention and why it's so cool?
Yes. So this isn't really marketing per se, or it didn't set out to be marketing. I would say it is a strong personal brand. And that is Mandy Patinkin, actor Mandy Patinkin. I know him from Homeland, Saul from Homeland. A lot of people know him as Inigo Montoya from Princess Bride. And his wife, who's also an actress, Catherine Grody. And they have been making videos the whole time that they were stuck at home during 2020, during quarantine, and with their son. Their son's been making videos of them. So some of those are just like he'll give them a prompt or a series of rapid fire prompts, and they'll just say whatever comes to mind, just free association. So they'll say like rocking chairs, candles, hot air balloons, cats on leashes, and they'll just go off. And sometimes you'll see them interacting. Sometimes their answers are so good and so off the top and natural. Like, Catherine will say like cats on leashes. Well, that's really always very strange when you see that. And I just don't know why you would want to have a cat. It seems like a strange animal to own. So their personalities are just on full view in all these. And sometimes you see them interacting and they're hilarious. And they really care about a lot of things and will, for a good cause, say just auction themselves off. I just saw them auctioning themselves off, offering a 30-minute Zoom couples counseling session.
For cats.
Yeah, for cats. And they're just sitting there debating, their son is the one behind the camera and saying like, what are you, why are you offering this? How are you qualified? And they're like, well, we're old. Mandy Patinkin says empathetic. And she's like, well, I don't think that I'm pathetic. And he said, I said empathetic. They're just cutting each other off and interacting. And like, yes, I want couples counseling from these people. They're just so delightfully themselves and fun, which is always unusual for anyone in Hollywood, right? And they're older, also unusual to see older people, whether it's on social media or in any way, being celebrated as influencers in any way. And so I just love them, and they've made a big splash. They were featured in the Times. I love what they're doing. They're able also to support things that they care about in a non-strident, non-annoying way that gets you to care.
That's incredible. You're right. I mean, there's definitely like a certain stigma reputation with Hollywood actors, and those that people look most fondly on are those that you hear stories about. Like, for example, we have a family friend, the Mandels, that ran into Adam Sandler a few years back in LA, just at a movie theater. I mean, he was just, I don't remember if it was his movie or if somebody else's movie. They just like saw him, and he was so kind and taking pictures. And obviously he's like a mega star. And you hear the same sort of stories about Steve Carell. I mean, I just heard that from Office Ladies, but same sort of thing. Those are the celebrities and kind of like A-list people that people look most fondly of, because they're just really down-to-earth people. And it's really cool that your example, whose names I will continue to butcher, so I'm not even going to try, that they're able to show themselves online in such just a natural, casual, conversational way.
Yeah, we love people being their candid selves. And that's not something that a lot of people are able to do, actually, hard as they try, because they're trying too hard to be candid or to come across as candid, and it just backfires. And these people are so candid and so natural. And there's one that I love where the son is like, Catherine is just like, take the camera off me, please. And he's like, why? And she's like, I just saw myself in the mirror. And so jowly, like all this. She keeps like rubbing her face and showing like the jowls. And she's like, just this. He's like, what's this? And she's like, I don't know. It's awful. It's all falling. And it was it was like a truly vulnerable moment. And speaks to so many people. And like any woman who is finding herself on the north side of, say, 50 can relate to that.
Right. And I did not expect a Jowls reference, but I mean, couldn't have asked for a better Jowls reference. But that actually brings up a really key point that I think a lot of people struggle with. When you're about to post a video, like to Instagram stories or reels, or whatever you're doing, when you're about to record yourself online, is there like a quick kind of check or just deep breath, something you do just to be like, hey, just be yourself?
Well, I mean, I'm probably a terrible role model for it when it comes to, say, video, anything with a camera, because first of all, I keep making sure that the camera is held above. Speaking of jowls, do not get near. Don't get near me with a camera that's lower than my chin, and or even the top of my head. Like if you look at my phone, there, like scroll through my pictures, you will see sections of like 40 of the same shot of me with the little video symbol on it. Like I will start a video 40 times, thinking I'm going to dash it off in a minute. Like I'm just going to do something really quick and casual. I keep flubbing, keeps going wrong. Nope, didn't like that one. I get so self-conscious and trying to be myself. The only way for me to do it is to do something live, because then I just keep moving, keep going. That I don't think that was really a quick tip. I'm just not the go-to for that, for feeling natural, being natural. I'm so self-conscious about, and I think I always have been self-conscious when it comes to photos and videos, and always think I don't look good. So, and you can ask my husband, who will try to take a picture of me or post one, and I will take his head off. Because I'm like, how dare you post that picture of me? You want everyone to think your wife is old and ugly. And which is not really attractive of me. He'll be like, no, it's a great picture. What are you talking about? I'm like, Jesus Christ, you hate me. So,
Oh my God. Well, you're going to have to take all of that back, because you have nothing to be self-conscious about. But I appreciate you sharing kind of the mindset of what goes on, because it's something that so many people struggle with and have those thoughts. And I mean, it's very natural to have those thoughts. So let's get to the unusual pet peeves, quirks, weird talents. What is a weird talent you have, like a party trick, something that you're just really good at, but really doesn't have an impact on your business?
Yeah, I'm terrible at party tricks. Like I used to be really good at Rubik's Cube when I was, 12.
There you go.
I could solve it in
10 years after Sesame Street.
yes, I could solve it in like 2 minutes. But and I got all my tricks from a pamphlet that I bought at Woolworths. But I would say my current weird talent that actually does affect my business is that I'm a great eavesdropper. I hear things. I just hear people are like, how do you hear all these things on the street or in a bar? And I just pick up on them. I can't not, and I write them down. I'd say I'm a great eavesdropper, and that does affect my business because I work those things into my blog posts and emails and things like that.
There you go. Well, it comes from your spy background.
Yes, it does. By the way, there was no spying done at Spy, but okay.
just the legal team made you say that. But
Mm-hmm.
how about pet peeves? What's your biggest pet peeve, other than people eavesdropping on your conversations?
Yes. All right. I have two I have to name at the current moment. So one is what I will call vulnerable bullshit or vulnerability. So, vulnerability is very hot, especially in the entrepreneur world. And people are like, you've got to show vulnerability. And so people will post these things that are like, they're just like vulnerability alert. And then they'll say something like, my most vulnerable post ever, coming off a 7-figure launch, and I'm really feeling unworthy of all the success I've earned, or I'm really hitting an upper limit problem and feeling like now I'm coming down with a cold because I can't handle all the success, things like that. I'm like, that wasn't vulnerable. That was just a brag, or that was just a vulnerable brag. That anything like braggy masquerading as vulnerability drives me bananas. My other pet peeve that comes to mind right now is because I'm writing a book and very interested in my book buying audience and people wanting my book. It's narrative nonfiction, it's personal essays. And it drives me crazy that people in the online space, the entrepreneur world, don't understand that books can also be fiction. Like they can be novels, they can be narrative, they can be stories, and that is worth reading. There are people who don't want to read anything or even acknowledge a book that is not instructional, that's not going to tell them like 5 steps to a great morning routine. So you can ask for, anyone got any great fiction recommendations? I'm going, I need something to read on the beach. And they'll say like, oh, the Big Leap is awesome. Gay Hendricks, you got to read it. I'm like, that's not fiction. Do you know what fiction is? So people, like all these people who claim they're so interested in storytelling and they're like, storytelling is everything. They're not interested in stories. They don't understand that they're not interested in stories. So it's time to like realize that great stories are worth reading and you will get something from that.
Yeah, and we've seen that with former guest Joe Pulizzi, the godfather of content marketing. He he was doing content marketing books for so long, and he's still doing them, but a year or two ago, he had his big reveal of his thriller novel, The Will to Die. It's really cool when you see people like yourself that don't just stick to like the traditional nonfiction business style book, even though you have so much knowledge in that space. I think it's really cool to branch out from that perspective, and you kind of have a way with words as well. So
thank you. And those books are rarely going to be great writing. Sometimes they are, but rarely are they really well crafted writing that you want to read to get better at writing.
Exactly right. WRITE. Well, verbal pun. I'm never going to eat a banana again. And then what is a quirk you have? Maybe your husband, somebody calls you out for it. It's a little bit quirky about your personality.
Oh gosh. So I knew you were going to ask that. And I was like, what are some of my quirks, hon? And he was like, oh gosh, let's see. You don't drive. You can't use chopsticks. You're weird and walk everywhere. He was naming all these things. I was like, these are all things that bother you about me. And he's like, isn't that what a quirk is? So I guess, I guess so. He had a long list. I would say one of my weird quirks is that I cannot handle the sound of anything scratching fabric. So like if a waiter comes over to
I'm squirming now. Thank you.
With a crumb scraper. Oh my God. I can't, I go into like basically the fetal position and have to rock myself until it's over.
You're much happier just being like surrounded in crumbs.
Oh yeah.
All over the sweatpants.
I'm in a dark place. Yes.
Yeah. Talk about example of being detailed. When you talked about scratching, I shivered, I squirmed because I know what you're talking about. I don't even think I knew a crumb scraper was a thing, but now I have such vivid imagery about that you're just practicing what you preach.
Yeah.
All right, let's wrap up with some rapid fire Q&A. You ready for it?
I think so. Let's see.
All right, crumb scratchers aside, let's get wild. What is your favorite NYC restaurant of all time?
Of all time, you know what? I'm going to have to say Lupa, even though it's become so touristy and we rarely go there anymore. It's also so hard to get in still. Lupa, and it's where my husband almost proposed, but I screwed up. I screwed things up. I didn't know he was there. We were there for him to propose, and I was like, "Oh, I'm not feeling well. I don't think I want anything to drink." And asked to change tables, etc. He's like, he like abort, but Lupa forever.
wait. So how was he like? No. I really think that you should feel better and we should stay at this table.
Like tried, he was like, should we order, how about some champagne? I was like, my stomach's kind of funny. And then also the people next to us were like talking about how they wanted to name their kids after Jada and Will Pinkett Smith's kids. And it was just like a corny crowd. Yeah, nothing was right about it, about the evening. And I think they were like out of the pasta we wanted. So he just discreetly tucked the ring back into his jacket.
Not that, yeah, I think the pasta was the dagger there.
Yes.
What is a creative writing tip you can share for finding a much more better and vivid word to use?
Oh.
And I realized I just said more better.
More
so
better.
There's a little bit of irony there.
Ironicalism. If you want to find a more better word, use onelook.com. That's ONE LOOK.com. And it is like a pimped out thesaurus on steroids, whatever you want to call it. So it doesn't just tell you related words. When you look up a word, you can find related words that start with the letter C or that end with the letter S. Or there's so many different ways you can use it if you're looking for a specific kind of word. That's the jam right there.
That is the jam. And your book, I think, has the best name ever. Tough Titties.
Mm-hmm.
Tough Titties. I'm a I'm a sucker for alliteration, so that we'll just ignore my pause. That was about to be one hell of a sentence that came out. I'm a sucker for alliteration, so that's on brand to another level. Can you give a little, like a very quick sneak peek of what someone will get when they read Tough Titties?
When they read Tough Titties, you want me to? Well, okay, I'll give an explicit peek since you said explicit is okay.
Yes, encouraged actually.
Yeah, one chapter you will find in there, if I have my way, is blowjobs I gave in the early 90s.
Okay, there we go.
It might be the longest chapter in the book, so how's that?
Well, it depends on the guy, but and then I don't know where to go from there, but well, let's do it anyway. So, in a perfect segue, who is a TV character that you would love to hang out with? And then this has no ties to the previous question, or maybe you could answer it that way if you want.
Good one. I'm thinking of all my favorite TV shows, and I have to say, would you call them characters? They're cast members and characters. I would say Real Housewives of New York, original cast.
There we
go. I want
go.
to hang out with them. And they're terrible people. I mean, I don't expect them all. I don't want them all to hang out at my house. And I don't want to go on vacation with them. I don't have the right things. I don't want to fight for the best room in the villa with them. I don't ever want to be in that situation, but I definitely want to hang out with them.
And you certainly don't want to see any crumbs being scraped up anywhere close to them.
Oh God, no.
Well, Laura, thank you so much. This has been effing amazing. See, I just want to censor one just to keep you on your heels. But thank you so much. This has been incredible. Really, really appreciate your stories and calling me out on how to spell bananas. I almost pronounced it wrong there. And even certain chapters from your book. But thank you for sharing your tips, your titties. Where is the best place for people to connect with you and Talking Shrimp?
Please come over to talkingshrimp.com. If you're interested in, we talked a little bit about emails and writing great emails to a list. If you are interested in that, you will want my freebie, which is a guide to non-sucky subject lines. You'll find that on the homepage, but you can also go to talkingshrimp.com/subject lines. And then if you want to find me on Instagram, I'm at Talking Shrimp NYC.
The best talking shrimp in the land. Oh, well, perfect. Last thing here, final thoughts. The stage is yours. Anything you want, send us home here.
Okay, I'm going to send you home with read fiction and stop reading business books.
And if you're undecided on which book to read, then Tough Titties. Thank you so much, Laura, for coming on the show, sharing your Talking Shrimp ways, your amazing tips, and all the above. And thank you, wild listeners, for tuning in to another episode. If you want to hear more wild stories like this one, make sure to follow the Wild Business Growth Podcast on your favorite app and tell a friend about the podcast. You can also find us on Good Pods, where you can check out the podcast that a bunch of very cool people are listening to. And if you want to learn more about podcast production, you can do so at MaxPodcasting.com. Until next time, let your business run wild.
Bring on the bongos!